Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're flipping the pages of a wondrous ancient text to discover some seriously profound advice from a legendary Buddhist monk. We're diving into Nagarjuna's lessons in life. It's this fascinating piece of literature that completely bridges the gap between deep mystical philosophy and, well, just highly practical daily living.
To set the scene for our journey today, I want you to ask yourself a super simple question. If an ancient mystic handed you a manual on exactly how to rule your life, would you read it? Because, the teachings we're about to explore, they weren't just theoretical musings. They were literally written to guide an actual king. Imagine having one of history's greatest thinkers acting as your personal life coach, just handing you the playbook to rule not just an empire, but your very own mind.
So let's meet our guide for today, Nagarjuna. He was this incredibly brilliant, kind of mystical 2nd century Buddhist monk and philosopher. The text we're breaking down is called his Precious Garland, and it was basically a comprehensive letter of advice designed to help a monarch, specifically a king of the Shatavahana dynasty, rule his empire with supreme compassion, ethical fortitude, and deep, deep wisdom.
His whole premise here is just brilliantly simple. He writes, "O king, I will explain practices solely virtuous." Now, obviously, he's addressing a literal king here with absolute political power, but make no mistake, this text is absolutely a universal guide. It's a manual for anyone, meaning you and me, trying to rule our own lives successfully, organize our priorities, and actually find lasting happiness. Okay, let's dive into Act 1, the foundation of happiness.
So how exactly do we build this foundation? Well, Nagarjuna splits his path into two very distinct goals. First, we have high status. And no, that doesn't mean having a fancy car or, a million social media followers. He means worldly happiness, good fortune, and just rock-solid foundational ethics. Then, on the flip side, is definite goodness, which is all about ultimate liberation and deep wisdom. But here's the kicker. Nagarjuna argues you can't just skip to the end. You literally have to build that high status as a stepping stone of basic goodness before you can ever hope to achieve the absolute heights of definite goodness. To attain that initial high status, Nagarjuna issues what's basically a royal decree outlining 10 core ethical rules. He calls them the 10 gleaming paths of action, and they completely cover our body, our speech, and our mind. We're talking everything from not stealing to avoiding harsh speech, all the way up to just totally giving up harmful intent. Nagarjuna vividly warns that avoiding these non-virtues is the real secret to keeping the vicious snakes of afflictive emotions out of your kingdom. And seriously, who wants emotional snakes slithering around their kingdom? Nobody. If you want peace, you've got to stop creating the chaos in the first place.
But he also throws in a pretty major reality check here. He explicitly warns the king that true spiritual practice, it's not about painful self-denial. We always picture these ancient monks meditating on beds of nails, right? But Nagarjuna says practice is not done by just mortifying the body. Why? Because just starving yourself doesn't actually mean you've stopped injuring others, and it definitely doesn't mean you're actively helping anyone else. Real practice is all about generating positive, helpful actions for the people around you, not just, making yourself totally miserable.
All right, moving right along to Act 2, letting go of ego. So once you've got your basic ethics down, it's time to tackle what I like to call the final boss of human suffering. And this brings us right to definite goodness. To gain that ultimate liberation, Nagarjuna challenges the ruler with a massive riddle. Where does the I come from? This concept is famously known to completely frighten childish minds, but it totally extinguishes fear in the wise. He really wants us to look closely at this thing we constantly call me and mine and realize that, it might just be the absolute greatest illusion of all.
He explains this with what's got to be one of the most famous metaphors in all of philosophy. He basically compares our sense of I to a reflection in a mirror. Think about it. When you look in a mirror, you see a face, right? But is that face actually inside the glass? Of course not. It only appears to exist because of the mirror, the lighting, and your physical body. In that exact same way, Nagarjuna says the I only appears to exist because our physical and mental parts like our body, our feelings, our perceptions, which he calls the aggregates, are just temporarily grouped together.
So the absolutely crucial takeaway here is this. Once you finally realize the self is not this permanent, independent, inherent thing, you can actually relax. You can just drop those heavy, defensive walls of your ego. Because when there's no rigid I to protect, there's no obsessive clinging to mine. And without that clinging, Nagarjuna promises you can finally escape what he calls the dreadful jungle of cyclic existence. That is how you find true, lasting liberation. which perfectly sets us up for Act 3, Compassion in Action.
Okay, so now that the king's ego has been totally dismantled, how on earth does he actually run a country? Well, Nagarjuna explains that true wisdom doesn't isolate you. Actually, it naturally blossoms into this incredible compassion for all living beings. A truly wise ruler doesn't just sit alone in a cave meditating on emptiness while his people are out there starving, right? Instead, they use their immense power to actively care for the most vulnerable. Because if the boundary between me and you is just an illusion, then your suffering is quite literally my suffering.
Nagarjuna then instructs the king to walk this genuinely remarkable path of generosity. Step 1. Take care of the sick, the lowly, and the unprotected humans in your kingdom. Makes sense. But he doesn't stop there. Step 2. You literally need to provide food and water for dogs, birds, and even the tiny little ants at the anthill. And then Step 3. The ultimate goal. You have to make yourself available for the use of others just like the earth, water, and wind. I mean, just imagine a political leader today striving to become a literal natural resource, a public utility existing purely for the benefit of everyone else. It's wild, but it's brilliant.
And the advice actually gets even more radical. Nagarjuna straight up tells the king, without hope of reward, provide help to others. You have to practice this extreme generosity without secretly hoping for some sort of karmic bribe, without wanting people to constantly praise you, and definitely without expecting a fancy reward in your next life. You bear the burdens alone, and you share your deepest joys with those who have absolutely nothing.
And that brings us to our final chapter, Act 4, The Ultimate Life Lesson.
Tying everything together, Nagarjuna completely flips the script on typical human selfishness. He reveals that the absolute, most intelligent way to ensure your own happiness is simply to dedicate your life to helping others. It totally sounds like a paradox, right? But the Dalai Lama actually refers to this exact concept as wise selfishness. Basically, if you want to be happy, make other people happy. Because our lives are so perfectly intertwined and interconnected, sending out goodness is genuinely the only reliable way to experience goodness yourself.
And that brings us right back to the Precious Garland itself. This legendary text proves that whether you're ruling some ancient, sprawling empire back in the 2nd century, or you're just trying to navigate the messy complexities of your modern daily life, Nagarjuna's lessons in life remain the same. The absolute most powerful tool you have at your disposal is an altruistic mind. It is the foundational key to high status and the ultimate gateway to definite goodness.
So I'm going to leave you with this final, pretty provocative thought to ponder long after this explainer wraps up. If your life is a kingdom, what kind of ruler are you choosing to be today? Seriously, are you ruling with a tight, frightened grip on your own ego, or are you ruling with the open, completely boundless compassion of Nagarjuna's ideal monarch? The manual has already been written, guys. The rest is entirely up to you. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey today, and keep learning.